What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in. This week we're going to tell you about a pretty unique national park that we visited. We'll let you know where we stayed to visit that park. So the national park that we visited was Hot Springs National Park, and when we were looking for somewhere to stay to visit this park, we thought about staying at Gulpha Gorge Campground, which is located inside the national park. However, that's a first come first served campground. It's full hookup. It's a full hookup first come first served campground inside the national park. So given the way RV sites have been, how it's been very difficult to find RV sites in general, we weren't really too excited to rely on trying to roll up to a national park campground like Gulpha Gorge, knowing how popular it is. We thought about it, but we decided against it. So the place that we ended up staying was Brady Mountain Campground, which is an Army Corps of Engineers campground located about 40 minutes from Hot Springs. So it's close enough. We could stay there. We could drive over very easily from there. So that's the place that we decided to stay.
So for our stay, we stayed in Site 23, and it had a really nice view of the water.
Yeah, the pictures online on recreation.gov of most of the sites there don't look exactly like what you're going to see when you arrive at Brady Mountain Campground. They've cut down a lot of trees. They've taken quite a few out. So if you go online and look at Site 23 and any of the other sites on that loop for that matter, when you get there, it's not going to look like that. There are a lot of trees that have been taken out, but overall they're all really good sites. We didn't really see any sites that were bad as we kind of drove through there and drove the campground loop. It's a really good campground. That lake, the lake that it's on, is crystal clear water, beautiful lake. The biggest drawback is the fact that it is way off the main road, and the road to get back to it is very skinny. It's very small. I mean, we're kind of used to the fact that most Army Corps Engineer campgrounds are way off the road, off the main highway, and a lot of times it does seem like you're driving back like through a neighborhood or back through to the middle of nowhere before you actually get back to where you're going and find the campground. And that's how this one was. I mean, we drove and drove and drove. There's a little one-lane bridge that you had to go across to get back to where the campground was, so it's way back there. But once you get there, the campground itself, super easy to navigate. You know, no issues getting a large rig through there. We saw a lot of big Class A's. We saw big fifth wheels in there, so no problems with that. It's just leading back to it. Don't be afraid that your GPS is driving you back to the middle of nowhere. It'll get you back to the campground. It's just a ways back.
Yeah, and another important thing to note is they do not have water at the sites.
Yeah, we're usually on top of stuff like that, and this time, for whatever reason, I don't know if we just assumed. I think we just assumed that they had water at the sites. You know, when we were out west, we're used to the sites not having water, but for the most part, all the Army Corps campgrounds that we've stayed at in Arkansas and really anywhere over here on the east of the Mississippi, it's been standard campsites with water. So the gentleman, the gate attendant there, let us know that up front. So we pulled over, filled up our tank. So that was convenient. It would have been a little more of a hassle if we would have got there and got set up and realized there was no water at the site. So from there we drove over to Hot Springs National Park. We knew this wasn't a typical national park. They do have hiking trails and things like that around all throughout the national park there in Hot Springs, but obviously the main draw is Bathhouse Row and that whole area of Hot Springs National Park. So that's where our destination was. It's about 40 minutes from the campground, so not a bad drive. Once we got there, we started trying to find some parking. We ended up finding parking in a free parking garage, which is like one street over from Bathhouse Row, so it's not way, you're not parking way off in the boonies. It was pretty close. And then we just walked over to Bathhouse Row. It was extremely hot that day. It was very hot that day. There were heat warnings, so we tried to get an early start, But even starting early, it was still, it was still 100 degrees that day or hotter. We went inside the Fordyce Bathhouse, the Fordyce Visitor Center, and walked through there. Very interesting place. It was a different experience, but it's pretty remarkable that they built a whole city around these hot springs, and there was a lot of stuff in that visitor center explaining how people would take trains all the way from St. Louis down to hot springs to soak in the magic hot spring water down there in Arkansas. So pretty interesting as far as the history of that area. We went over and went down into also went into another one of the main visitor centers, so Dylan could pick up a souvenir from Hot Springs National Park. So once we visited the visitor centers, there is actually a display spring that's behind the Maurice Bathhouse, so you can walk around behind the Maurice Bathhouse, and there's the Maurice Bathhouse display spring back there, so you can feel the water. You can see where it's coming out of the rocks and up through the ground, and you can feel that. And
when Dylan heard about that, he really wanted to go back there and try that out.
Yeah, he definitely wanted to go feel the water. And it's hot. I mean, it's not so hot it's going to burn you, but it's definitely hot for sure. And so that took him a little off guard. I think in his mind he was thinking spring water, even though it says it's a hot spring. He's been in Florida spring water, which is extremely cold, and he stuck his hand in there thinking it was going to be 68 degree spring water, and it was not. If you want to drink the spring water, they have hot spring fountains and cold spring fountains set up. They're out in front of some of the buildings, so you can bring your jugs. You can buy jugs to fill the water up to bring it back with you. We passed on that. We did not bring back any spring water, but it's there and it's available if you want to do that. So we finished up our trip with a drive up West Mountain. So that road just kind of meanders up to the top, where there's I think there's 3 overlooks up there that give you kind of a bird's eye view of downtown and Bathhouse Row. So that was how we finished the day. Beautiful view from up there, and just a really neat experience. We're definitely glad we went. It's very outside of what our typical visit to a national park is, so it's definitely unique. We're definitely glad we visited it. But if you just want to go to see the bathhouse and like Fordyce Bathhouse and walk through there and check out the visitor center, then that would be pretty much all we did. We spent about 2 hours roughly in that area, and by the time we parked and walked across and then got back to the truck, it was about 2 hours total. If you're into going into all the little shops and want to eat some restaurants down along Bathhouse Road, there's a lot of that there also. So you could spend a half a day or better there if you really checked out everything that there is there to check out. But it was 100+ degrees. The only reprieve we got from that was when we went inside the visitor center, and we actually brought Nix with us. So our dog, Hot Springs National Park, is pet friendly. Bathhouse Row is pet friendly. You can't bring them in the buildings, so we brought her along, and she was kind of over the heat as well. So we got her back to the truck, got her some water, took our drive up West Mountain to get a bird's eye view of everything, and then we called it a day. Alright, so that's going to wrap up our trip to Hot Springs National Park. We appreciate you guys watching, and we'll catch you guys down the road.